Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear, the podcast conversation about accelerating the transition to a sustainable carbon neutral society. And I am your host, Mitch Ratcliffe. Thank you so much for joining the conversation today. As retail locations struggle to attract customers after the pandemic, they're running short of backroom storage space and dealing with a rising tide of returned items. The situation is even more challenging for e-commerce companies, where returns accounted for $741 billion in lost revenue, the National Retail Federation recently reported. With overflowing warehouse spaces, the process of handling excess and returned goods is in need of an upgrade. A mind-boggling 21% of online purchases were returned during the 2021 holiday season, which suggests that the costs of returns at Amazon, which doesn't disclose this kind of information, could have reached more than $98 billion in 2021. In 2020, nearly two-thirds of shoppers bought multiples of the same item with the intention of returning some of them. About a third of the items returned are burned to generate energy, which is the epitome of wastefulness and a symptom of a very short-sighted thinking that adds to humanity's carbon emissions. Add the impact of burning perfectly good return products to the carbon footprint of that return trip from the buyer's home, and you can see how returns can almost double or more the environmental impact of a purchase. Our guest today is Marcus Shen, CEO of San Mateo, California-based B-Stock Solutions, an online marketplace for businesses that resell excess inventory. From the top 10 U.S. retailers, such as Walmart, Amazon, GameStop, and Costco, to small entrepreneurs looking to fill their shelves, businesses around the world use B-Stock to sell and buy returned and unsold merchandise, which is auctioned off or sold direct from the retailer's distribution center at a fraction of the retail price. For example, I recently browsed Amazon's auctions on B-Stock and found a pallet of lawn and garden items worth $9,700 at retail. And with just 17 hours left in the auction, the top bid was $425. Another mixed lot that included high-heel shoes, laptops, sunglasses, and dog leashes was worth $22,500 and was selling at $701 with the same 17 hours left before the gavel fell on the auction. The catch is you have to pick up the pallet or pay to have it picked up and shipped to you. Giving the rising tide of returned and excess inventory a second chance at useful life is critical to lowering the GHG emissions generated by our economy. We'll explore the crooked path known as reverse logistics and how the secondary market can help create a more circular economy. If you want to find out more about B-Stock, check out bstock.com. B-Stock's all one word, no dash, no space, bstock.com. Welcome to the show, Marcus. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
It's another beautiful morning in the Seattle area, a nice summer, and we haven't had any smoke, so it's not too bad.
That's great.
I wanted to, what you're doing at B-Stock is really interesting in terms of providing re-commerce at scale for large manufacturers. But what was your aha moment that made you move from being a financial executive to being a re-commerce executive? Did Howard Rosenberg, the founder, pull you aside like Steve Jobs did to John Sculley and say, come change the world with me?
It actually did happen a little bit like that. I would say that as I was thinking about new opportunities, for me, it always starts with people. And I would say that Howard, the founder of B-Stock, is as good a person as you can meet. And he and the team that he built they were trying to solve a very big problem around all of this inventory that gets potentially wasted. And so it sounded like a great problem to solve.
Well, a $1 trillion opportunity is hard to ignore. Tell us, now you describe yourselves as empowering entrepreneurs and innovators of commerce. Who are B-Stock's customers, broadly speaking?
Yeah, so B-Stock is a marketplace. And so as a marketplace, we have two sets of customers. On one side of our platform, we work with brands, retailers, some of the largest companies in the world who sell inventory on our platform. And then on the other side, we work with buyers. And these tend to be entrepreneurs, folks who are have small thrift shops, discount stores, sell online through the eBays and Amazons of the world. And so it's a pretty interesting mix of customers that we work with.
So if I'm a small business person, one of these entrepreneurs, what happens? Do I get a pallet dropped in my garage and I break it down and then list it for sale on my own site?
That's basically how it works. So they would buy something that they were looking to resell online. They get a delivery of these goods and individually sell those generally on, again, online tends to be the primary way of doing it, but some folks even have traditional discount stores where you and I can walk into and find things at great value.
Uh, okay, so a dollar store could be a customer as well.
Exactly. So we do have folks like that who do, discount stores, off-price retail, kind of your small, apparel stores, electronic stores. It's a very wide range of small retailers on the other side of the platform.
Do you have a sense of how much, in terms of volume, of waste that you've resold and prevented from going to landfill?
Well, we are, as we know it, we are the largest player kind of in re-commerce from a B2B perspective. To give you a sense of kind of the volume that we're doing, last year, we sold just about 120 million items on the platform, right? And that's a massive amount of things that we're saving from going to landfill.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I know is a concern for a lot of people is whether stuff gets shipped overseas. Is most of this transactional activity happening in the United States, or is this a global phenomenon?
So to date, we've been mostly focused on the United States, as you might know from the customers that we work with within the U.S. They tend to be some of the largest brands and retailers here in the country. That being said, there are buyers on our platform who are hungry for American goods, and they know that there's a big demand for those goods overseas, whether it's in Europe and Asia and in South America, other developing countries. And so there's a lot of trade going overseas, and it's a great opportunity for small businesses.
So essentially, these folks are acting as distributors, but they're sourcing their products from re-commerce rather than buying new.
That's exactly right.
That's really interesting. And the whole idea that this $1 trillion worth of material is actually created a sub-economy of re-commerce is extraordinary. Tell us, so we end up in this pickle with all this excess inventory because of the way that the return process works at retail. Can you walk us through what happens when you send a product back, for instance, to Amazon or another online seller?
Sure. So what typically happens, kind of the flow of that unit or that good, is you return it back to the retailer. The retailer will inspect the good and consolidate things based on where they want that to be ultimately resold. And so sometimes that stuff is good enough to restock on the shelves, right? Which is frankly, that's the best outcome, right? Where the retailer can just put it back on the shelf and resell. In some cases, that stuff is not good enough to put back on the shelf. And so they have to make a decision as to whether they want to sell that in bulk or wholesale in the way that they sell it on a platform like Bstock, or they may want to think about selling another way, so they can potentially sell it through their outlet stores or through B2C channels as well. So that those goods get consolidated if they're going to go B2B, get listed on our platform for sale, and buyers can see these listings. They chop them up and just soup them up from a buying perspective, and then we try to do everything we can to make that transaction as easy as possible for both the sellers and the buyers.
Does that happen at the listing vendor, or does Amazon make those decisions because they've received this and the vendor has a policy that says we don't take something back? Who does that decision?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so ultimately, we want to make sure that both the retailer and the original vendor of the product are happy with kind of the fact that this stuff is getting resold. Sometimes the vendors do have restrictions or rules around what gets resold and where it gets resold. And so it really depends a little bit on a vendor by vendor basis.
I, do you report your sales? I mean, what percentage of that $741 billion in returned items is B stock capturing?
Well, we're not yet a public company, so we don't have public figures as far as kind of revenue. But suffice to say, that we have a decent chunk of that number, but there's a lot more that's not getting managed correctly.
So, is that a hint that you might be thinking about an IPO?
Well, I'd say that we're still a little ways away from that, but we are, as you can imagine, this market is growing really, really quickly. And so there's certainly an opportunity for someone to take this to the next level.
Yeah, it'd be nice if the stock market was cooperating, but yeah,
that's right.
Absolutely. Now, another phenomenon that's going on is and this is surprising to me because of the pandemic, that retailers are running short of storage for inventory and returned items. How's that changing the cost of returning an item, not just to the retailer, but to us in terms of cost passed along to the consumer?
Yeah, so I think that the couple things we've seen, particularly in the last few years with the pandemic, is that the businesses are certainly getting much more thoughtful about supply chains, about how they're managing their operations from a warehouse perspective. And so it's really more them being smarter and much more innovative and around the way that they're kind of constructing the supply chain. And so as they have more of this inventory for that is building up in warehouses, they just want to be thoughtful about that inventory and what they're doing with it. Because again, from their perspective, that's cash, right? That's cash that's sitting on the floor. And so for them, they want to figure out like, hey, how can I move this faster? How can I move this at the most effective price? And all in the name of serving us as consumers, right? So one thing that we should remind ourselves is that whether it's return policies, flexible customer return policies, or even kind of the fact that they have these incredible selection of inventory in their shelves, it's all kind of what we want, right? We want that convenience, we want that selection, and so they are just trying to figure out how to give that to us as consumers at the most effective and efficient price.
Well, in terms of price, one of the concerns in around the world is a lack of equity. And I noticed that Amazon, for instance, has a program called FBA donations that's directed at least $100 million to charities in the US and the UK. Are there opportunities to direct unsold or returned inventory to underserved communities?
Yeah, and a lot of our customers actually already do that. A lot. I mean, again, I think that right. And so a lot of retailers will take advantage of the fact that they can donate product to charities and organizations within their local in their local geographies, which I think is a great part of kind of where this type of inventory can also serve kind of the greater good.
Has BStock looked at facilitating those kinds of donations if it can't dispose of something?
We have not yet. We do recognize that it's a portion of the puzzle that we could let's call it expand into, but we've got our hands full with all the inventory that we're seeing from all these big players already.
That's really interesting. I want to take a quick commercial break. We're going to be right back to continue the conversation. Hey, extended producer responsibility change makers, let's unite. Meet me and the Earth911 team in Portland, Oregon this September at the 2023 U.S. Product Stewardship Forum, the nation's only conference dedicated to EPR legislation and best practices. The circular economy is being crafted today, brick by brick, with EPR legislation, and packaging recycling efforts are leading the way. 2022 saw unprecedented momentum, with 18 states considering over 60 EPR bills, and 6 became law. This year in Portland, you'll find exclusive insights from globally recognized EPR experts. The Product Stewardship Institute invites you, the movers who will shake their regional recycling and composting systems with new ideas. Network. Hone your EPR knowledge and form strategic alliances to drive the circular results this world needs. Now is the time for producer responsibility. So join us at the 2023 U.S. Product Stewardship Forum in Portland, Oregon. That happens from September 11th to 14th. Register today at productstewardship.us. Product stewardship is all one word, no space, no dash. Productstewardship.us. Be a part of the solution because stewardship starts with you. And we are back to continue talking with Bstock Solutions CEO Marcus Shen about their re-commerce marketplace that helps businesses resell excess inventory. So, Marcus, reducing waste is critical to sustainability. And like you said, we want this stuff. And so it flows through the economy. But unfortunately, there's this waste component. Would bans on overproduction or disposal of goods be effective, in your opinion?
I'm not sure that that's the best way for us to affect the change I think that we all want. It's very hard to define overproduction or to regulate overproduction. What I do think is probably more effective is that if we create a lot more transparency in general around kind of where this product is going in that whether it's brands and or retailers, if we can kind of, let's call it, just take a peek under the covers about where all of this inventory is going, particularly the stuff that is getting returned or that is sitting on the shelf. I think that would go a long way to kind of making sure that both the businesses, retailers and brands, but also us as consumers, if we knew kind of where the places we shop, that to know that they're doing the right thing, I think that would go a long way.
So in order to contribute to the transparency, should companies be publishing inventory reports on a regular basis? Because of course somebody else would need to aggregate all that information so it was comparable. But where should we start in order to create that transparency?
I think some of the big retailers are already very forward thinking about this. We've certainly see some of our large customers already publish ESG reports where they're talking about what they're doing from a sustainability perspective within their footprints and their stores. And I think that's kind of I see that as an evolution in the right direction.
It's interesting because all the controversy around ESG, but what we're talking about here is not the negative reporting, but the positive. We actually kept this inventory in use.
Exactly.
Like that would be a benefit to the brand.
Huge benefit, right? A huge benefit for them to be able to talk more, more, being more forward and being more public about kind of what they're doing with this stuff, because a lot of them are doing the right thing.
France in 2020 took the first step towards that kind of transparency, but they did it by banning companies from throwing away many kinds of unsold goods. Have you seen any evidence in the European market or in the French market that changed the volumes of unsold or returned inventory going to landfill?
We haven't seen a ton of it. And to be fair, we are still kind of getting our feet wet in Europe and outside the United States. But what we typically hear about, because we certainly talk to potential customers within certain countries, that particularly like the high-end brands of whether it's retail and goods, they tend to be, unfortunately, a little bit more, let's call it aggressive about kind of protecting their brand. And that generally means that they're making sure that stuff does not get resold to protect, obviously, the brand equity that they've built in.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I can imagine that in France, whether it's, again, I'm not a brand person, but like the fancier high-end luxury brands of handbags and shoes and apparel, a lot of that stuff, they probably are trying not to, or at least that's historically been their approach, is that they don't want to see that get resold or reused.
Yeah. A Gucci bag for $10 doesn't send the right message about a Gucci bag.
That's exactly right.
Now, as you think about this problem of transparency, reporting, understanding the flow of materials and waste in our society, do you think that would be more effectively addressed at the regional, national, or do we need a global approach to this in order to move materials the shortest distance to markets that can use them?
Well, I think it's hard It's hard for me to say exactly what's the right way to regulate this. I think a lot of these businesses, at least in the United States, they're global businesses, and they obviously have the largest footprints, and with multiple locations, frankly, in every single state across the union. So my sense is that it would be hard to do at a regional level, but more likely is something that you would do at somewhat of a national level. I think it's clearly in our country's interest to make sure that we're again making good use of these products that are extremely valuable, and two, kind of reducing the amount of unnecessary movement of goods kind of across the country back and forth, and all the unfortunate touches that they may require to move this stuff.
Now, let's take e-waste as an example. We know that only about 18% of it is recycled on an annual basis. Why have recycling initiatives failed to make a significant impact on that waste, in your opinion? And how do you position e-commerce as an alternative to recycling?
I think one of the big challenges is it's one of these things where everyone knows it's the right thing to do, but sometimes it's inconvenient or it's hard. We do see at the corporate level, some of our customers from a consumer electronics perspective, that there are companies who are truly at the forefront of this. I would say a lot of the carriers, cell phone carriers like AT&T and T-Mobile are absolutely, like, they're the leaders in kind of the way that they're recycling and reusing and protecting kind of these goods when they get traded in or get returned or something along those lines. So there's a lot of great work that's being done by some of these companies. It's just, I think that when people try to manage this stuff in a manual process, or heaven forbid, if we leave it up to, the individual to kind of recycle, I think it becomes more challenging for us to do it at scale.
And based on what you see in terms of people taking the time and effort to buy and trade in unsold or excess inventory, do you think that recycling should be clearly attached to a compensation for sending something back? And to your point about AT&T or T-Mobile, they do give you a reward for sending a phone back. Do we need incentives in place?
I think so. I think that tends to be the most effective way to kind of get people to do the right thing. And so, again, these trade-in programs, I think, are great programs to make sure that those things are going to the right places. I think there's probably other things that we can do in other categories, and we could probably learn a ton from the things that the mobile carriers have been doing.
Well, that raises another question: is what complementary services to yours do businesses need to enable a circular economy? When you think about reverse logistics, for instance, you kind of have the problem solved. Amazon or Walmart or Costco collects this stuff and gives it to you to sell, or rather lets you sell it and then they ship it. But in order to capture or recapture more material that might be resold, do we need other kinds of collection programs, on-demand pickup? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that we're a software company, and so what we do is facilitate a transaction. But one of the key parts of this value chain is really the logistics folks, right? The folks on the operational side who kind of are in charge of kind of making sure that product is in the right condition or is graded in the right way and is ready for resale or reuse. And so I think that they play a really important role in this. And I think that, some of the partners that we've worked with, again, are doing some great things there. But I think that there's even more we can do. I think that there's probably more that 3PL companies can do to kind of be even more intelligent about kind of how this inventory is collected, as you mentioned, as well as kind of sorted and distributed and channeled into the right place.
So as you look at the market, are there gaps in the system that you think are ripe for innovation or investment? If you thought, well, there's a company that somebody should start.
Well, I think that I can only talk about from our vantage point. I think the big things that we are certainly thinking about are
Mhm.
certainly, again, improving velocity and cycle time, and like how efficient can we make this process? Because again, that old adage of time is money is not, it can't be any more important than it is for retail, because these guys are really trying to move inventory as quickly as possible in general. And so we're thinking a lot about how do we make this, streamline the process and make these transactions go as quickly as possible. Two is certainly kind of making the market and continuing to expand our leadership in this market, so that we can help them get the most effective pricing, and so that they're not leaving money on the table. And then lastly, how do we make sure that from our experience in re-commerce, and how do we help them achieve their sustainability goals? Because I think more and more of these companies are really, really thinking about that. And so I think that a lot of the data, we're working on a lot of big data projects right now to kind of give them more intelligence about making the right decision about where these products are going.
So one of the benefits of engaging with B-Stock is that you get greater insight, not only into where your excess inventory is coming from, but its disposition.
Exactly. And so we try to help them across the board as far as kind of where this product is going, how much it's going to get, or how much it could get, and we're gonna obviously make sure that they're putting the product in the right channel.
Now, another key to the sustainability of this entire system is the sustainability of B-Stock. Have you analyzed the carbon and other environmental impacts of the return process, and particularly how you operate?
Yeah, we're starting to get even smarter about that stuff ourselves. I would say that, from a big part of the process, as I mentioned, is an operational piece, right?
Mhm.
So our logistics partners, our trucking companies that we work with in our network, I think that they arguably have they have the best insight into kind of how we can do better things around things like carbon emissions, and kind of reducing the amount of stuff that has to move from point A to point B. But at least even from a B stock perspective, there are certainly things that we are doing, whether they're little things, right, Mitch? Like things like
Such as?
laptops that we use. We want to make sure that we resell those as well, right? And so we're trying to do our best to walk the walk as well.
Have you set any public emissions or other goals?
We have not yet. Again, we since we don't actually control the trucks, or we don't have any, frankly, we don't have any warehouses or trucks at all. So it's not something that we have direct purview into. But I think one thing that we do think that our technology and data can help inform, how can we route things more intelligently? Like you mentioned before, can we reduce the distance that products are traveling to deliver for buyers and sellers? I think that there's a lot more that we can do from a data perspective.
That's interesting. So, and essentially, look, you're all Scope 3 emissions, or almost all Scope 3 emissions, the truly indirect emissions associated with the other parts of the supply chain, but you can optimize that supply chain by looking into it. So that's a really powerful position to create some distributed results in terms of emissions or other environmental impacts. But as you think about making a public commitment, what metrics are you going to focus on? Is it going to be carbon emissions that you from your operations, or are you going to be trying to bring all those Scope 3 emissions into focus to say, look what we're changing overall?
I think so. For us, I guess, as a technology company and facilitating a transaction, the number one thing that we think about from a sustainability perspective is still how many goods get resold. We really feel like that's kind of ultimately first and foremost for us, because we know from this industry that if that stuff is not easily and effectively resold, unfortunately, people are not going to do the right thing, and that stuff will land in, or will end up in landfills. And so we're first and foremost kind of thinking about resale and how much we can help resell.
As you look forward and think out at 5 or 10 years, what percentage of that vast amount of unsold material do you think that we can take out of the system? And Of course, that means through organizations like BStock.
I may, and call me a dreamer, but I believe that most of it can be recycled and reused, because by and large, as you know from buying things ourselves, like a lot of that stuff gets returned, and it's still new in the box, right? It's not anything, right? It's not anything that's anything wrong with it. And so I think that the optimist in me says that we could reuse most of that, eye-popping number of amount of inventory.
It'd be good if we got rid of the $1 trillion in waste.
and we're aligned on that as well, because I think that when we talk to our customers, particularly the brands and retailers, they certainly don't want to waste this stuff either. They don't want they would certainly love to be much more effective and efficient about managing these returns, and for us that ultimately is the goal.
So how can folks follow along with what BStock's doing, or maybe shop?
Yeah, I mean, so we are a business to business marketplace, and so if they are small businesses, if they have retail stores, or they want to start their own online resale business, they can come to bstock.com and look at all the many things that we have for sale on the platform, and get themselves started.
Well, hey, Marcus, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
It was great talking to you, Mitch. Thanks a lot.
We've been speaking with Marcus Shen, CEO of BStock Solutions. It's a leading excess inventory marketplace. And to learn more about BStock, and if you're looking to start a small retail or e-commerce business, shop the excess inventory, you can visit bstock.com. BStock is all one word, no space, no dash, bstock.com. Sustainability is built on reducing, recycling, and reusing everything as efficiently as possible. But our online and in-person shopping habits have created an economy that is bursting with waste. Recommerce is simply reuse at scale, and of products that would otherwise never get a chance to be used, even once, before going to a landfill or ending up in an incinerator. Returned items don't go back on the rack or shelves at many stores, as Marcus explained. They're treated as damaged goods and consequently become waste. There's no good reason that $750 billion a year worth of merchandise should be tossed out without serving the purposes for which they were designed. We can reduce the waste by shopping responsibly, which means with an eye to avoiding waste. Don't order 3 sizes of a new shirt or blouse and return the 2 that don't fit. Returning a faulty item, if that new phone doesn't work, is perfectly reasonable, for example, but would a blemish on the finish be something that you could live with because the phone case covers it? If we can assume a retailer or website will toss that slightly imperfect phone or the shirts we ordered, knowing that they might not fit, we are just as responsible for the waste as the retailer. In the climate era, we cannot treat these decisions with the same casual concern that we would, say, as asking a clerk to check the storeroom for a different size and come back with 2 or 3 alternatives. Instead, every return trip to Amazon or Walmart that a product takes adds to the carbon footprint of our lives. The small business opportunity in excess inventory might be combined with local charity to enable low-income communities affordable access to goods. If instead of burning or trashing the millions of pounds of excess inventory, we made it available to people in need, there are a lot of social ills that we might address. But is more stuff always the answer? No. Better choices, including responsible inventory planning by retailers, are another key to unlock a more sustainable lifestyle. And that's why the transparency that Marcus talked about is so important. Recommerce is an essential feature of a circular economy, but it cannot justify the wasteful practices of, for example, fast fashion or the annual upgrade cycle that drives the electronics business. We need to use things longer. We need to take better care of them. We need to repair them so that the embodied carbon footprint of making, shipping, and distributing them can be earned back, and actually we can go carbon negative by using those products longer. We'll continue to track the evolution of this entire recommerce environment, but hopefully we'll also be reporting a decline in wasted resources. Hey, I hope you'll take a moment to share this podcast or any of the more than 400 others that we produced on sustainability in your ear. If you take a moment to write a review on your favorite podcast platform, it will help your neighbors find us. You folks are the amplifiers that can spread more ideas so we create less waste. Please tell your friends, family, and coworkers they can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, or any of the other fine purveyors of podcast goodness out there. Thank you, folks, for your support. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe. This is Earth 911, and we will be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.